There's a
Oh, okay, it is?
Yep.
Okay. Am I allowed to take my mask off? Okay, cool.
press the button.
Hi, guys. Thanks for letting me come today. I mean, essentially, my submission is in support of the Waikanai Old Beach or Waikanai Beach submission. But just to give you a little bit of context, I just thought it would be worth coming here and chat with you. So that basically is what I'm going to tell you is a bit of context for why I'm in support of it. I live at 82 Terry Street in Waikanai Old Beach. My cousin lives next door at 78. My husband's best friend lives next door at 82. My girlfriend lives behind me in Ngāpaki Street. Another cousin lives in Ngāpaki Street. We've got two sets of friends who live in Hamara and another two who live in Raupraha. And another one in Hohuria who's about to press go on a $2 million new build. Basically, we've all recognised the specialness of Waikanai Old Beach, and we've built our community, our whānau, wider whānau group around that. Our kids have grown up, you know, going to Foursquare with ice creams and bare feet in the grass, going down to the street with no footpaths, and it basically forms the fabric of who we are as a whānau and our kids. And I think a lot of Kiwis feel that way as well about that particular area. There's lots of Wellingtonians who come to visit the area and stay and spend money in the area. And you can also, I guess, appreciate there's other people who feel the same way, because you can see the prices that people are paying to actually secure a place at Waikanai Old Beach. So when KCDC came out and in support of recognising Waikanai Old Beach as a special character area, as well as Tihoro Beach and Paikakariki and Otaki Beach, we were thrilled. We thought, yes, this is good. We've got support there to keep this sort of nostalgia going, if you like, because it's part of our Kiwi culture, it's part of our whenua. And it reminds us of a simpler time in life, I think. And I'm wondering whether you guys would also agree. So when the Growing Well submission came out, I thought, hey, great, recognise the pressure that's put on our community about the housing stuff. But I thought, but what's changed? Why is Old Beach apparently no longer considered a special character? And I just sort of thought that while the Growing Well concept and plan overall is pretty good, I just like to acknowledge and support not throwing away that special character area. And also maybe we could achieve the infill, if you like, by moving the hub that you've presently got located at the Old Beach Bakery and move that to Narara, where there is open space for us to grow. There's already plans in place to build schools and supermarkets and all that kind of stuff there. So why create another one and put all our special character area at Waikanai Old Beach at risk? So that's really what my submission is about, and I had two questions for you.
You have questions for us.
Yes.
That's interesting.
So the question is, because I couldn't find anywhere in KCDC where Old Beach was actually formally recognised as a special character area on the website. I know there was a draft plan and I linked that in my submission. So I was wondering whether it actually went through and was considered as part of the district plan, which limits the size of the subdivisions and the heights and the fencing and all of that. And can we protect it from growing well and the government's proposed changes to the RMA?
Right. Questions. I have one question. Is it possible to have a 2-minute speech?
Yes.
Or is it? Okay. Right. Questions. I have one question. Is it possible to have a 2-minute speech?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 you've spoken quite eloquently about the village feel, the neighborhood feel, the special character, and what it means. Can you tell us what you think of the RMA Amendment Bill, which will allow carte blanche the building of 3-story buildings in existing lots? What do you feel about that? And council has got no control over it.
Yeah.
Because no consent is needed.
I understand it and the need for it, but I think there's also a place for it. And, you know, we need to, like when we've gone and invested a significant amount of money in the restoration of the Christchurch church, you know, to protect that. We put historic places, we register those kinds of things, and we're not allowed to touch them. So I think Waikanae Old Beach is one of those areas that we need to wrap our arms around to prevent that sort of thing going on, you know, the change in the light planes and how high you can go and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a place for it, but not in those areas in the special character, particularly in this case. But, you know, maybe at Narara, maybe in the more modern areas, maybe, you know, the hub concept of down by, coastlands, you know, I've even bought a place there just because I think that that's important to to do that kind of thing. Or around the train stations, I think that's, you know, really appropriate. But not where we're limited it and got this special nostalgia for Kiwi culture stuff, yeah.
Councillor Pravano.
Thank you. Through you to me. Thank you, Joanna, for coming along and speaking today and supporting Waikanae Beach Residents Society. So you've spent quite a lot of time talking about preserving the Waikanae Beach character, and I'm the Waikanae Ward Councillor. But I just want to extend this a bit further in terms of this area has a lot of diversity in terms of different characters, whether it's rural, whether it's actually more intense, and whether it's actually beach character. Do you think that it is important to maintain that diversity and to maintain some of those special characters rather than actually trying to make everything, or not make everything, but actually risk those areas of, I suppose, unique character to this area?
Yeah, absolutely. That's basically what I'm saying there. Let's protect some of those special areas, focus that growth in other areas, but let's not lose our history, our character as part of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Morena, Joanne, thanks for coming in and talking to us this morning. Just listening to you talk to the context around your submission, I was wondering whether you could help us understand the changes or the step change away from the community outcomes document that both you and other speakers have talked about, so much work being done around creating. Who do you see responsible for these proposed changes that obviously yourself and the other society, the Waikanae Beach Society, are strongly against? Do you see that as council's doing, or what do you see as the impetus for, the thrust for this to?
So it was interesting because, you know, the government, and it's going to be pretty scary, isn't it, that Labor and National have joined up and announced those cross-board changes. The timing of that sort of coincided with KCDC's release of Growing Well. Now, I don't know whether they had joined at the hip or whether it was just bad luck or good luck, I don't know. So I think it's a joined up thing, and I'd like to think that KCDC goes in there and champions how it wants the Kāpiti Coast to look. So government responsibility, but KCDC to go there, roll up the sleeves and fight for what we want. Yeah.
All right, thanks very much. And I'll just say we would very much have liked if they'd had talked to us about it. That would have been a lot more helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Henford.
Yeah, kia ora, Joanna. Just a quick question from me to kind of expand on maybe some of the questions that have already been asked. But you did talk a lot about that special character and the culture and the history. How do you think, and what are some practical ways you think we can maintain culture and history, but also orient for the future that's kind of needed and might look different? Because obviously history doesn't always repeat itself and new history is created.
Yes.
So how do you think we balance the need to kind of retain and allow people to understand that history while also creating a future that provides for people's needs, especially in the housing space?
Yeah, well, I think your Growing Well document sort of does lay that out in a reasonably overall good form. It identifies the pockets of areas that would be appropriate for infill and upscaling and that kind of thing. But I think it just needs to go that little step more to identify those areas that we want to save and protect. For example, the Waikanae Old Beach Medical Centre, that went in, I don't even know why that's in there, to be honest. That's kind of like stealth mode. And there seems to be a lot more concreting going in there. Why are we ripping up our footpaths to put new ones in when the old ones are fine? Who's allowed the driveways on Ngāpaki Street to come right down to the road? Why isn't that continue to be gravel so that the the rain and flooding can just soak straight into the ground instead of rushing out onto the street? I mean, I think we've got to identify those areas we want to protect, identify those areas where we have the growth and the infill, and muscle up and make it happen.
Councillor Compton.
Kia ora, thank you for speaking to us today. You were talking about the special nostalgia of Waikanae Beach and how representative it was of Kiwi culture and the importance of preserving that. Do you think that $2 million new builds and house price growth that's been in excess of 30% just in the last year, and even before that, before COVID, it was going at 10% per year, putting those houses completely out of the reach of the vast majority of the average Kiwis? Do you think that is Kiwi culture, unaffordable housing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I take your point. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I guess, and I don't think it is Kiwi culture. That's not really who we want to be. But I don't know how you manage that. I can't answer that question. I don't think a $2 million build is appropriate. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, we need to try and maybe that's where the council comes in and, applies pressure to size and coverage of the sites and things like that. That's not going to change the price, unfortunately, and we are getting a bit like that in terms of, the gaps widening. So, but people can come and visit, and they can go to the Old Beach Bakery, they can get their fish and chips and have it on the beach, they can visit that Foursquare with the Foursquare guy, which is, obviously from the past, and have ice creams and have a beer at Long Beach, do the Waikanae Arts Trail. People can still experience that, go to that playground, go to the boating club, go white baiting if we can get our river sorted, do that, all that kind of stuff. So yes, while people may not be able to live there, they can still come and enjoy it.
Can I ask a follow-up question, please?
Yes.
So why does the special character of other areas, so I live in Paraparaumu Beach and I happen to think that's pretty special,
Yes.
So why do we have to sacrifice or have changes to our special character just so you can enjoy living in a museum?
No, I agree. I mean, I live at Waikanae Old Beach and I can't solve the problems of the world, so I'm taking off a little piece that directly I'm affected by. So I agree with you. I mentioned at the start Tihoro Beach, Otaki Beach, Paikakariki, Paraparaumu Beach, they are as important as the others. Yep.
Councillor McCann.
I think Councillor Compton just covered off my question, which is how do we then, if every group of residents believe their area is special, how do we actually create the intensification, which is the only way we can increase the number of houses to avoid where we are, which is a housing crisis. So how do we decide between all the different areas that want to keep their area the same as it currently is?
Yeah.
And that's what the Growing World document tried to do in a very constructive fashion. How do we achieve that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough balance. That's why you guys are paid the bucks. Sorry. But, in terms of Waikanae Old Beach, that hub area identified at the Old Beach Bakery, there's a better place for it, I think, and that is Narara. Why not there as opposed to there? As soon as you put it at that bakery area, which has really only got a dairy, a bakery, and a fish and chip shop. I mean, really, it's not a hub currently. I mean, it's at an intersection, whatever. There could be better places for it.
Nicole.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've really helped highlight some of the challenges we face.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Holbrook.
Yeah, I just thought I'd answer your two questions. I know that's unusual, but it was unusual to ask them. But so very quickly, I sat on the hearing for the beach residential special beach character area, and they are in Appendix 3 of the operative district plan. So, as you're probably aware, some other developments are kind of challenging that, through this process, which is unrelated to the central government legislative processes, which was your other question. And
Sorry,
yes,
just to clarify, so it is actually part of the approved district plan?
Yeah, so if you go into the e-plan on the website,
Right,
and then click read the plan, and then go through, it's in Appendix 3.
thank
And
you.
you'll be able to see it there. And the answer to your second question is no. We can't really override central government legislation.
I
So
guess
we can
I'm
put in
not
submissions, which we have done.
suggesting override. I guess work together to protect. Yeah, okay.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Carolyn. Look, I just want to, sorry, Joanne, I just want to address a process question, please, Your Worship. We've had submitters this morning. Stuart Fraser asked a question about construction demolition waste. A couple of questions from Grant Robertson, and now Joanne's questions. At what point are staff able to interact and answer these questions, or will it be happening later in the written responses?
I suppose that when we are really in workshop mode later on in the day, when this is finished.
So, if you will...
So if you note those questions down, then we can sort it out with staff.
So submitters have to watch the live stream and wait for their questions
Yeah.
to be answered? Okay.
So
Sorry.
you don't pose a list of questions and then provide the answers in minutes or something after the meeting?
Sean.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the questions that have been raised have been noted by staff, and where that's appropriate, we'll fold that back through into the either coming back with the submission document or the actual final report itself. And if there are other questions, I guess outside of this process, then more than welcome to forward those directly through to council, and we can look to respond to those separately from today if they're not specifically related to the strategy document itself, like the waste question that was raised earlier.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Then thanks, Janet, for answering those questions straight away. That was great, and thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry for anyone who has to wait for their answers to that.
Okay.
Right. No other questions, John. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
The next respondent 103 or 42, Ewan Patterson. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. When I looked at the survey online, I wanted to come here and defend the continuation of the airport. Just a brief history. My father worked at Paraparaumu Airport in the Met service from 53 to 59. I was brought up in Paraparaumu at that time, and I now live at Waikanai, and so I've got a pretty long history of the area, and I thought it was appropriate. I just came and tried to defend the future use of the airport. I think in the report you put out, you were in the future thinking of, is it 30,000 more people living up here in the next 20 years? Is that correct? Is it
32,000 really in the next 30 years.
Yeah. See, we have a problem here with Wellington Airport, I believe. If you go to Wellington Airport, I've actually done both. I've used the Air Chatham service 3 times to go overseas, and I've used the train to go to the to Wellington Airport. It's a very long way from here to Wellington Airport, and the way the council there are proposing their future transport coverage, I think it's going to get a lot more difficult to get from A to B, as it were. And I think that the airport's a gem we should keep. Now, if a developer decides that they want to remove the airport and put housing where the land is, you're going to have a problem with Kāpiti Road. You're going to have far more people using it. It's already a problem from about 3 to 5 o'clock every day anyway with traffic flows. And I just thought I'd try and defend the use of the airport. I find Air Chathams are a very good company to fly with, and but I do realise that there's big problems with cost. That's been pointed out. So I just briefly thought I'd come along and talk about. I mean, I have got a connection with the place. I mean, with my father working here in the 1950s. I mean,
right, I think there are questions for you.
Yeah.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission today. I was just picking up on the point you were talking about access through to Wellington Airport and that you believed it was going to get worse in the future. I was wondering, had you looked at the 4 options that Let's Get Wellington Moving has put forward for public consultation, which includes that eastern corridor to the airport, and it's got bus rapid transit to try and improve the flow of traffic out there?
Yes, I did. How long's it going to be before we get rapid transport? That's my question to you. I'll give you an example of travelling by train. Especially if you're going anywhere for a holiday. Where I live, it was good. We got a bus to the station. Halfway down, the guard comes and says, "You'll have to remove your luggage because the bikers are coming on." So, I mean, that's very inconvenient when you've got big. It's inadequate. And if you don't want to use public service, it costs well over $100 before you even start your journey. If you want to take a taxi or Uber or that sort of, I just see difficulties because the plan is you want more people living in the area. Well, I think the airport is a gem that we've got that we shouldn't use.
Have you got another question, Councillor Walton? No? Well, no other questions. Thank you very much for taking the time speaking to us, Ms. Ian
Not
Patterson.
at all. It's a pleasure. Have a good day.
The next respondent, 103, Brian Runford. Welcome, Brian.
Good morning, thank you. I'm here just to really answer questions, basically, because I hope my submission was clear enough. But generally, it was pretty specific in terms of identifying, I think, some land which seems to be an anomaly within the current district scheme, and which in fact had at one stage been designated as urban, as to part. So it really was the question, look, there's some land there which seems to fit very easily into 4 or 5 sections, which, as small as it might seem, can help in what the intensification program is. It seems to fit fairly squarely within the government requirements and perhaps your own strategy documents. And I probably can't do any better, because I hope the submissions were clear enough, is really to refer to the two plans, which I don't know whether you've still got them or not, but 2B and 3, to just show that part of the property was zoned residential, and the KCDC did change that of their own volition. But of course, that was something that was 20 years ago. And I think looking at Plan 3 is really what it's all about, in terms of just opening up a little bit of the front of that portion which is rural, which would just be a continuation of the urban area on either side of the property. So really there's not a lot more to say, unless there are any questions.
Right, any questions? No, doesn't seem to be any. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
'57 is Will Casey Birch here? Oh, it's on Zoom. Will, you there?
Yes, I am.
There you go. Keep to the main point, then we'll open up for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors, for your time this morning. And my name's Will Birch, Chief Executive of Barber Commercial. We're involved in land development and a company owned by Simon Barber, who also owns Jenny Homes Wellington and Milestone Homes Kāpiti. We have just recently purchased some land in Otaki at 33 Main Highway, 4.5 hectares of greenfield land just on the fringes of the Otaki town centre. Just in support of our online submission, I just wanted to reinforce some points in relation to that, and in particular our land, which is just on the outskirts of the currently designated town centre fringe on your spatial mapping as part of your strategy for growth. We would just like to highlight that piece of land and give it due attention to hopefully have future consideration for that greenfield space as priority development. We are very supportive of the strategy proposed and the proposed approach to sustainable growth, in particular growing up, out and well, and the ability to intensify on-site in a vertical way, if you like. The levels of intensification certainly open there, given close proximity to many local amenities within the Otaki town centre. Barber Commercial is also very encouraged by the statements made by Council in relation to Otaki as being seen in time as a district centre to the north to complement the establishment of Paraparamu as the coast's city centre. We believe it has huge potential, particularly given the development, of course, of the expressway soon to open. And then in time, we're very supportive of the development of the transport hub for rail, and in time electrification to really link up the region as part of the overall framework for growth with other city councils and the Greater Wellington Regional Council. So really, it was just to emphasise our points in that regard with the submission, and that Barber Commercial has land that we are very keen to develop for housing supply, and to work very closely with the Kāpiti Coast District Council to achieve the goals of Barber Commercial, of course, as a developer, but equally the aims and goals of the Council's long-term plan and strategy for growth.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Coates.
Morena, well, Otaki Ward Councillor here, James Coates. I'd be happy to meet with you at some stage when you're available, and appreciate you talking to us this morning. Could you maybe just share a little bit around what sort of vision or plans you could have for that site? Should it be allowed from a district plan perspective, from the growth strategy, in a way for you to do the type of development to meet the need around the housing crisis? It would maybe just be helpful to understand what type of development within those walkable catchments.
Yeah, sure. My name is James. Good morning to you, and yes, certainly keen to meet up. Absolutely. Look, it is very early days, James, in terms of the site itself and our thinking, and we have literally just in the last 7 days engaged civil consultants locally. I don't think I can say it's Cutras, and I know Cutras have a very strong relationship with council as well, and so we're busily sitting down now and having those conversations around what our vision is. In other developments, Barber Commercial, and Simon himself as the owner is very motivated to ensure a whole of market development here. So looking at the ability to provide for both first home buyers, retirees. We also know, of course, that there's a significant tertiary institution in Otaki here with Te Rananga Orokawa campus, of which there are a number of mature students these days too. That will also, we hope, assist with meeting the needs of housing that's required in the region. Both standalone housing, terraced apartment housing, some of our other developments that, James, I'm happy to talk to you a bit more about and sort of show and tell a little bit when we get a chance to chat with other developments, both in Levin, up at the Hinamoa estate, and also down in Porirua. There are other developments on the Kāpiti Coast and Paraparaumu that we are both developing at the moment as well with different housing topologies. So really, I suppose in a nutshell, there will be a mix of both density and housing topology that we're wanting to meet the needs of the market as a whole.
Thank you. Well, last question from me. In the situation where we've had other developers looking at developments in the area, we've encouraged them to meet with council, and in certain instances, some of the councillors or portfolios involved. Would the group be happy to meet and talk through around what a good development could look like, and considering the feedback from council officers and elected members as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Barber Commercial more than happy to do that. Yes.
Thank you. Look forward to catching up.
Sure. Yes.
Councillor Bravano.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Will, for coming along and speaking to us today. I have to admit, I've noticed that piece of land had a for sale sign and been sold. I'm just interested to know what classification of soil type or soil use is it? Is it Class 1, for example?
Goodness, sorry, I don't technically know the answer to that. We had our due diligence on the site prior to completing that. The transaction suggested that the site had very good soakage, but I don't technically, know the answer to the soil type. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So, third question: what is your view as a developer in terms of using good quality Class 1 land for building houses on?
Well, I think with this particular piece of land here, it's very rare to have such an open space in close proximity to town centre. And coming back to my point around alignment with the council's growth strategy, being able to reduce carbon footprint, I think, is critical here. And having accessibility in different forms of transport and modern transport, whether it be e-scooters, cycleways developed and walkways to access these local amenities. I think this is a rare piece of land that can be optimised through the need for housing supply. So we believe it's the right approach in terms of using this land for that particular purpose.
So I suppose I'm not sure I quite, maybe you didn't understand my question, but I'm just, as a developer, I'm just interested to know whether you think it is appropriate that Class 1 land, and I don't know whether this is or not, it can be used for housing.
My understanding is that it can be.
Do you think it's appropriate, though? That's my question.
Well, yes, I do. I mean, this parcel of land sits in between residential housing to the north, Sue Ave and Moy Place, with a subdivision developed, I think, some 15 odd years ago. So I think it really is an extension of that in terms of the land use.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other questions, Will, so thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Next, number 35, Rochelle Wilson. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Well, as you can see, my submission was really just a sort of massive paragraph because I didn't like the way it was done. And I would also say that it was kindly printed out for me today because it didn't come back as my text to me. You know, I did it on your website, and my submission didn't come back as a text. Usually it doesn't. But I had a really good example from Forest and Bird where I did a submission and they did all their questions and all my text back in an email. And I suggest that for the future because I'd forgotten what I'd written. And I found what I've written is basically the same as what I submitted for the long-term plan. There's a little bit different because you asked one or two different questions. For instance, you mentioned electric scooters as being something great. And they are not, and you can see that in my submission. They're absolutely horrible, and they're not used as transport. They are used for fun, and that's not a good use of electricity in the circumstances that we're in. I suggested no parking availability on streets, except where the dwellings are far away from public transport and there's no room for garages. And as far as housing intensity is concerned, as I said in my long-term plan submission, which you haven't got, of course, there's no requirements, no mention of requirements for new house builds to be of a smaller size. The ones I've seen locally are enormous, or that they should all have solar panels for water heating at least, where the site allows, i.e. they're facing in an okay direction, or their colour. And because there's black and grey seems to be the in colour now, and it's really bad for climate change, or for putting aside low-lying areas. Low-lying areas have been put aside by this council or any others, basically, because they're allowing it almost at sea level all the way up. And such housing should be on stilts or something like that. I've got 3 minutes. Is that 1 minute?
Yep, you can just sum up. Just carry on. Also, all those things that I mentioned, for biodiversity, that we need more trees, we need more space, we need more nature, and we need less lux in the lighting, and very highly shaded. Everywhere is more lighting. All the lampposts are really high, and they don't stop upward light going upward, and they should. And LEDs have been disastrous for insects because we do not understand, because humanity is stupid, that we are all electromagnetic, right from the cells that have sodium, potassium, chloride, etc. Everything works on electromagnetism, and on the lesser, as they say, life forms, insects and so on, they use it for their navigation, for their mating, for their timing of everything. And if I've lived here since '92, and I have seen such a drastic reduction in insect life, so that I carefully save flies from my house so that they can go out to feed birds, because many of our birds are insect eating, and there's just no insect life
being killed on our windscreens anymore because it's just not there, and it's all with the ever increasing electromagnetic changes of our environment, and they are not needed. We do not need 5G. It's basically so that people can kill each other more virtually, more effectively and excitingly, or turn on their appliances without getting up from a chair.
Right. Can you open for questions now? Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, just picking up on your comments around electric scooters, and you're saying they're not for commuting, they're just for fun. Are you familiar with how they're used in, say, Wellington City or the Hutt Valley, where corporate office workers actually use them to commute across the city rather than taking...
Well, they could jolly well walk or cycle.
In terms of the distance, I don't necessarily not everyone takes a bicycle into the house, and they will hire one of these e-scooters, and they work fantastically well.
They don't. For the ordinary public, they don't work well. I'm sure they work very nicely if someone wants to go leave at a last minute and then go quickly somewhere else. But time your things differently. Anyone would think that the moment that saving a minute here is going to be drastically important for council or office business, it won't be. And it isn't, and it's a terrible, terrible mess.
Right. Councillor Hensworth.
Kia ora, Rochelle. Just a brief question from me, kind of in a similar vein to the question from Councillor Compton. You said no to, or e-scooters are a no in your view, but yes to initiatives which reduce emissions. So I'm wondering if there was kind of the infrastructure by way of, more kind of inclusive footpaths that could allow for people to walk, but also lanes or whatever for people to e-scooter or e-bike. Is that something that you think would then make them a more acceptable mode of transport? And further to that, do you see the same issue existing with e-bikes as e-scooters?
No, that's why I only mentioned scooters. I've seen the scooters in action, and they are for fun. Basically zooming along, coming back, zooming along. But where they're left is a hazard. Where they're left is a real hazard.
So if there was a way to provide for parking of e-scooters, though, that would help to address somewhat of some.
But there isn't, and people don't.
Yeah, if there was.
I mean, this is the whole point about them. You take them from A to B, and you leave them at B, and that's it. It's often so with cycles too. In London, there are very frequent. When the last time I was there, in 2019, and of course I won't be going again ever. There are big cycle containers on streets quite often in central London, and there are none on the road. There are none against walls.
Right. Thank you very much, Rochelle, for taking your time and speaking to us. Thank you very much.
Is that it? Okay, thanks.
The next is respondent 83, Liz Cole.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'll be very brief. I guess I would like to ask some questions of Council regarding the growth strategy. One is, what is the purpose of this document, and who's going to read it? And thirdly, are you going to just take a passive approach or a more active approach in terms of creating opportunities? So my reading of this document when I went through it is that it struck me as being one of those documents where you can go, tick, we have a growth strategy, tick, we have done consultation on it, now we can put it to one side and carry on. Now, that may not be the case, but that's how it reads. And I just would like to say that if that there is a missed opportunity here with this document, because I think it is time now for Kāpiti to be proactive in terms of creating opportunities. And, I think, the growth strategy can be a key kind of marketing document, if you like, for economic development in Kāpiti. It's something we can wave in front of business people and property developers to say, here is our strategy, our growth strategy. We are really excited about it. We would love for you to come into our district and help make this happen. And I think, if we're going to use it in that way, then it needs to be reframed somewhat. it certainly needs to come across as a more proactive kind of document, and one that is more inviting more engagement between council and property developers and business owners. So, just relating to that, I guess, one of the comments I've made in my submission is that you've talked about population demographic. You haven't talked about the business demographic in Kāpiti. That is key. We need to really look at our business demographic and decide, are we happy with that business demographic, or do we want to change it? And if we need to change it in order to grow, how are we going to do that? Because as we know, Kāpiti is full of micro businesses, and we lack sort of core big business here. Also there's a big omission, I think, on the transport side of things. Transport is huge, and we need to address that. So it's really about I think creating an exciting document, looking at how are you going to engage with the business partners, businesses, property developers, and have some clear actions and a really clear implementation plan. It's all about setting out warm fuzzy goals, but how is that actually going to come about? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say this is a proposed approach for enabling sustainable growth in Kāpiti.
Yep.
So it is actually taking steps to see what the community is looking at. Given we have got the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, it's actually framed some of this. And in the middle of this, we have had, once we started this engagement, we have the sort of RMA change. The bill on medium density has been plonked on top of that, middle of that. If you have a chance to read the submissions that have come in, you would notice that they are already actively, it has stimulated some active engagement from landowners to say, hey, look, we've got this plot of land that can do this, and the other. So I just am saying that
That's good.
It is proactive in the sense, but we are taking tentative steps. The big change will come when we actually do plan changes, and then there's a whole consultation process around that, where the issue solidifies. Anyway, Councillor Coates.
Morena, Liz, good to see you. It's still morning. Good to see you here. I hear what you're saying in terms of the economic aspect and the business aspect, and not just focusing on specific businesses. But equally, I know that other documents exist, like our long-term plan, and more specifically like our economic development strategy. So, in writing your submission and making those comments, do you not think that it is better that they sit in those documents that inform? I mean, all these documents lead to kind of Rome in terms of informing the outcome. So,
in fact, one of the comments I was going to make before I ran out of time is it would be good to see some cross-referencing, particularly in the implementation plan, to cross-reference back to those other documents and say, okay, there are some clear goals and strategies in these other documents, which and just bring those forward to the growth strategy. Cool. I think that would be really useful.
All right, that's great. Thank you. And look, I agree. But I think in terms of the growing well is specifically talking about looking at 30,000 people coming in, and the business and economic stuff is, I would argue is elsewhere. But I take your point in terms of integrating the two as we come to implementation.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions? Councillor Elliott?
Hello, thank you, Liz. Thanks for bringing your thoughts to this conversation, because it's really important, and you always bring a really unique view of it. I like the idea of this document being some sort of a prospectus. It's really excellent. And just wanted to, your question as to why do we do this? All councils are legislatively required to, and the strategies.
That's what I mean. Is it a tick box exercise? Because it comes across as that.
It kind of is. And just to let you know that as for the other questions, staff are answering all questions from submitters today at the end of this process. So hopefully it won't be too long to have more detailed answers.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you, Liz. My question's about in your written submission where you talk about the importance of having those communal spaces in town centres, and you sort of cite Mahara Place and Waikanai up in Levin as well. Are you sort of specifically thinking about Parapara Umu when you were writing that, and do you sort of see an opportunity for us to revisit our town centre strategy?
Yes.
Because obviously council's got a whole lot of land here.
Absolutely. Parapara Umu does not have a heart. And that's one of the points I have been making in relation to the land at the airport. We have this big gaping hole in our community that everyone has to drive around, and we've got sort of fragments here and there. We don't have a hub, a heart where people can congregate and do stuff and accidentally run into each other and say, hi, how are you, that kind of thing. And I think in terms of community resilience, it's really important that every community has a strong heart. I mean, the only heart we have is Coastlands Mall. Well, I mean, that's it's not everybody's cup of tea to go there, particularly midweek. Anyway.
So would you see something like Whale Song in the Wharemaku Park and integrating with the council land through there? That would be the opportunity to create that sort of space
we can have a
strip.
We can have a strip going right from here down to the airport and create something absolutely fantastic where people come together and congregate right along that whole strip. Yeah. That would be fantastic, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Holbrook.
As long as it's not a strip club.
Well, it could be.
Yeah. So just a few comments, if I may. I just want to reassure you that this wasn't a box ticking exercise, that our staff have put huge amounts of time and energy into trying to create the kind of vision that we want to see. And when I compare it to the work that's being done at a regional level, we've tried to take a far more holistic view, in fact, than some of the more just where are we going to put houses. We've pushed back quite strongly as councillors, saying that we wanted it to be about not just where people live, but how people live.
Yep.
And we had days of workshopping this. So certainly not a box ticking exercise, and one that we have worked really hard on, and our staff have too, and really care about, because we want Kāpiti to look the best it can. Now, in terms of it, just some of your comments around not mentioning business, not mentioning transport, that's one of the things that we did talk about as we're going through the district growth strategy, the open space strategy, the economic development strategy. How do all those documents talk to each other?
That's
and
right.
That's a piece of work that we're undertaking right now. So we'll make sure that we keep.
I get it. There is software available that helps integrate all those different policy documents. I don't know if you looked at that, but certainly, you need a big kind of matrix, don't you, where everything kind of feeds in. Yeah. And there is software that does that. It would be really good to see that being used, maybe.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that. That's something that reinforces some of the comments that have been made as councillors around the table as well. And in terms of transport, we share that concern, and we do think it's key. And quite a visible comment in our submission, in fact, on some of the central government reforms, is that we're expected to provide, infrastructure and intensification without, that enough consideration about transport links as well. So it's something that we're really aware of as well. Thank you for your submission. Some really interesting points.
Vanessa's busy. I'm just going to jump in while I've got the mic. Look, I just wanted to tautoko what Janet said. Couldn't stress more enough to you and those that maybe, I think if it's live stream listening, that it's definitely not box ticking.
Right.
Lots of workshops with iwi around working in partnership, changes to the draft proposal. Already I can see stuff coming through the submissions that will likely be taken on board. We're really keen to shape this document so it helps inform our future, and like you said, links through to our ED strategy and so forth. So definitely the stuff that we're looking is trying to help us enable good growth, enable good business growth. And like Janet said, I mean, all the way through from an Ōtaki perspective, I've been raising this issue around the disconnect between Greater Wellington and their planning and what we're talking here around growth and the lack of infrastructure around public transport. So
yeah. Thanks, James.
Thanks for coming in.
Right. No other questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Right. The next is not until 11:45. The number 87 Kāpiti Youth Council not coming in today. Take a break until then. I understand that Trevor Daniel passed away. Yeah. We will organize one. Yeah. Guy Burns texted me, and then his daughter had rung him. So I'm just asking for another confirmation. Good Lord. That's okay. You said that the last time.
So, Guru, I know that Sean has sent us an update on quota.
Oh, Sean. Is Sean available?